Hello and welcome to another episode of Literary Liberation Podcast. Today we will be discussing, analyzing, and reviewing The Poet Empress by Shen Tao. For more content outside of the podcast, please check out our Instagram and TikTok at Literary Liberation and Twitter at LidLib Podcast. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe if you are on YouTube. I'm sure if you're on another podcasting platform, the likes will probably help. I don't know how they all work, but I'm your co-host, Mariah, and you can find me at Hungry Rye on all social media platforms.
And I'm your co-host, Kristen. You can find me at TensTBR on all social media platforms.
And we are still fundraising for Code Pink, so the link for that will be down in the description below. But this book, we weren't sure the last time we reviewed something whether or not it was going to make the cut.
Yeah, and we didn't know what to review. Well, because we ended up posting a poll on our Instagram, so the listeners do influence what we read. So the listeners actually do control what we read sometimes, not only on our book club, but also we posted on Instagram. We put it up against Starter Villain, and was it Yesteryear also against?
Yes, I think it was those three, right? I think we only picked three.
Starter Villain. Yeah, I think we did Starter Villain, The Poet Empress, and Yesteryear. Which we still plan on reviewing Starter Villain and Yesteryear at some point too, just depending on whenever we have an opening for the podcast, because we do plan stuff out pretty far in advance. But The Poet Empress won, which I kind of figured it would, because it's kind of like blowing up on Book Talk.
Which you say that, and I haven't seen anything about it, but this book did just come out January 20th of like this year, 2026. Mm-hmm. So if you're watching it in the way future, it is August, so it's almost been exactly 8 months since this book released.
Which is new for us.
Novel, yeah.
That's new for us to actually, usually we don't read books the year they come out. Like, how often does that actually happen? You know, like Carl and
it really doesn't.
Daggermouth, I think, are like the only ones that actually came out this year that we reviewed. You know, I'm pretty sure. Oh, we did Operation Bounce House. So Matt Dinniman, we did Half His Age too. But like basically any Matt Dinniman, like if it's a author we look forward to, I think that's the only time we're gonna review a book. Or if it's something like
to
this,
let it like sit
marinate
and see what the public is thinking. And this book has been very, very popular. And I went into this not knowing anything about this, except for the way that it was advertised to me. Fantasy, romance, dark romance, which we'll get into, like, whether or not these genre descriptions are an indicator of a larger issue, because we have a lot of thoughts about it. But what's your spoiler-free review or spoiler-free summary?
I don't know, because it's really complex. I mean, because I also went into it as blind as possible, but basically you follow this young girl who is 16, because I don't know if this is classified as like a YA novel specifically, but there are like trigger warnings too at the beginning of this book about like talking about like I don't remember what the exact triggers were, but it's like, hey, this is a really dark book that talks about abuse and like partner abuse and stuff like that. So like we will be talking about that stuff too. So that's one other warning. But you basically have this 16-year-old girl who ends up like basically this is inspired by like early China too, like Chinese mythology in a way. And there's like an old emperor that's dying, and his sons are like fighting to be the next emperor for one, but then also like the one that's the heir next in line to be emperor, he has to start spreading his seed basically. So he's like, sign up to be my concubine, and this 16-year-old girl does sign up to be her concubine, and she ends up getting picked for better or for worse.
It's essentially like, I don't know, it reads a lot more. Now, if you were going to go into this before you get it, it's much more historical fiction-esque.
Mm-hmm. It's very like fantasy.
It's not rooted in like the real world. Like that's where like the fantasy is like it's not a real world.
It's not China, but it is
powers.
Yeah.
But it is not high fantasy, and I think that's a really important distinction to make going into this. I was very surprised. I wasn't. Well, I don't know about you. I didn't watch anything about it. I didn't read anything about it.
I didn't really watch or read anything. I think I saw like a couple people that were like, "Oh my god, this is so good," like a couple of people that I follow on TikTok, they're like, this is like the best book ever, blah blah blah, and they're like, and then like I was like, okay, so I guess this is something I should keep my eye on. And then it mostly re-entered my like sphere again because Newly Nova, her book club on Patreon, just did this book as well, and so then I was like interested in that because it got very high ratings there. And then also, I mean, on Goodreads, this is like a super highly rated book too, compared like the ratio wise. It's like,
Yeah, it's 4.40 star average with 36,000 ratings and about 10,000 written reviews. So it has a lot of written reviews. Very surprising.
mm-hmm.
Again, this is a
for
debut
being
novel.
yeah, for being out too, in like that, this book came out only a couple months ago too. Like relatively, that's thousands of reviews a month, you know.
And the author herself, she's not famous anywhere. Like she just went to school. I think she has an MFA, but she grew up in Canada. Like she immigrated from China to Canada as a child, and she learned how to write. And then this got picked up by, is it Bramble, which is a subsidiary of Tor?
Yes, but Bramble specifically, which I don't know if you want to talk about this now, Bramble is specifically their romance publishing category, which to describe this book as a romance, I think is a disservice to it. Not to say that romance books are bad or anything like that, but I think if you go into this book expecting a romance, you will be incredibly disappointed.
Yes. If
because it's not really
you have really good reading skills, I think, because there's a lot of
nuance
on the internet. Yeah, like nuance to the characters. They have like a lot of like backstory. There's a lot of intentions that you get to see. Like they're not all just like morally good and morally bad. You can see they're very complex characters, which I do think it's written really well. But this is not a romance.
No.
And I think that's really important to acknowledge, which I was going through since the author doesn't have a lot online. She did do an Ask Me Anything on Reddit in, I think it was published like on her publishing day. Okay. And she said that people were describing it as grimdark, historical fantasy, and anti-romantasy, but she doesn't officially endorse any terms, which I think anti-romantasy, I think that's a really good way of describing this.
I've never heard that term used for any other book before.
Neither have I.
Which I
but
do.
If you want to read the whole AMA, it'll be linked below.
Yeah, which I can definitely see that idea too, because the fact, like, you go onto Goodreads, like I think the first genre is what, like, fantasy, and then the second genre is romance. So that means people are tagging like this as a romance book.
Genres. It's very surprising. So I went into this because I just finished the KX Song little duology, so I was like, oh my god, it's gonna be another one. And that one is like there's romance in it. It's important to the plot, but it's very much a plot focused novel. Like the romance isn't driving the plot, so I thought it was going to be very similar. This is not.
No, this is
not at all.
That's why I was so confused too, because I remember I was reading this and I was so confused because I was like, this is a romance? Because I even messaged you and I was like, I thought this was a romantasy, and I was like, this is not a romantasy. Because so I like had no idea where it was going, because I genuinely was like waiting for the romance to happen. So I was like, where's that at? You know?
I felt like this, and I think you also brought this up, that this is more of like a fantasy version of Notes on an Execution, which we both are very big fans of that literary fiction novel. If you were looking for a good thriller that has, again, like good complex characters and understanding like why people do things, like ultimately this is a story that is exploring like cycles of violence and kind of that's what is getting to the heart of, like, not just like people being evil, but the nuances, and you're kind of like going through like at what point could this have been stopped. And there's a lot of there's abusive relationships all around. There's a lot of gore and violence, so I think that's kind of like the I would recommend it to people but I don't know if I would just like recommend it. Like,
I wouldn't recommend it to like a romantasy girly. Like if
no,
like
not
that's
at all.
but I do think if you like fantasy novels, especially like grimdark fantasy, then I think this is definitely something. I feel like this is almost like it's hard because like there is like a romance in it, and I'm using like romance in quotes because like there is a relationship, but a relationship to me doesn't necessarily equal romance, which that it's so like I just can't believe the publishing company being Bramble specifically, and that being specifically a romance imprint, which I'm glad this book was published. I do think it's an important novel, and I did overall enjoy it. I thought it was, especially for like a debut novel, like this is a really well done novel, and I think we'll definitely probably be reading Shen Tao's any more work she publishes. I will definitely be looking out for that.
Yeah,
And
it was a really nice way of like diversifying my reads as well.
yeah,
And the cover on this, whoever did the cover, fantastic job. They
but
absolutely
like
fucking ate with that. It's stunning.
if you're looking at
It's
the
stunning.
video, like I'm telling you, I was honestly so confused because like this is like got really beautiful artwork. I mean, the cover is really gorgeous. The I how often do you actually even have a hardback that's got like printed art on it anymore, And the fact that I do think this is genuinely like a gorgeous book, but it's just so interesting to me too, because how often for a debut author is that happening?
Yeah, like right out the gates, like within 8 months of it being published.
Not even being indie published at all. I am
I
curious
don't
about it.
know.
I like not saying that like because we were talking about it too, about whether or not it's like what's that one book? Not Quicksilver. What's the other one?
Silver Elite.
Yes, that, and how like everyone was like what's the word? Like they were like saying that it was like another popular author from a different genre, and then like so I don't know, like I'm not saying that this like she's doing the same thing, but it just is very interesting to me that this has already got such a special edition cover and everything, which I do think it's like a gorgeous copy. Like this is basically like I'd say it's up there to be like one of the actual like special editions like of my like One Dark Window, Two Twisted Crowns. And those didn't have any, those came out as paperbacks originally, like Rachel Gillig's first novels.
Honestly, this is gonna be one of those books I can very much see getting on like the Goodreads 2026, like in that,
Goodreads Choice
which
Awards.
I know it's like random now, it's like computer generated, but because of the traction, I think it's going to be one of those books that's getting those. I think it's going to win other awards. I would not be surprised if it wins. I don't, not a Bram Stoker.
Mm-hmm. Whatever the
I
fantasy.
can't remember what the fantasy one is. One of them. Maybe a
I don't know, 'cause
Nebula?
it's not the
Or is that
Hugo.
sci-fi?
No, because is the Hugo fantasies too, or is it? I think the Hugos are like fantasy and sci-fi. So, but I don't know if it was nominated for that. But I don't know. Like I genuinely like I was just really shocked to like that this one is public. Like I don't think the author is advertising it as a romantasy, but obviously like the publishers and stuff are kind of advertising it as a romantasy, and I genuinely think that's a poor choice for this novel. And then once we get more into the nuances too, we can discuss that. But it is just really, which it just reminds me it almost feels sexist. I don't know if you get that vibe as well, just because it's a woman writing like a fantasy story about like relationship and abuse, and like highlighting that and discussing it, but then it's being advertised as a romantasy to get people to read it. That's really weird to me.
It is weird. I believe it, and I think it's a problem.
Yeah.
It's either that or people are assuming that anything that has has love in the plot is a romance, and because it's a fantasy, it's romantasy. Words have meanings, and I think it's important to acknowledge that just because there's people who are together doesn't mean it's romance.
Yeah,
there's not romancing
Not at all. Not at
We're
all.
gonna we're gonna do it. We're gonna get into the spoiler zone right now because we're hitting like that 15-minute mark, and we've put off. This has been a really hard. I've been trying to think how I'm going to review this on like my own to get like a cute little succinct, like less than 3 minute long review. It's gonna be hard, and
Yeah.
even doing this in an hour long format is going to be very difficult because there's a lot to go over. But we can start at the beginning.
Yeah, I think
with the material conditions that are happening. So in this, I'm calling it China.
it's not.
In this
It's
dynasty,
never
but
described
it's not,
as.
But
It's not. It's never like we're in China, but it is very similar to like. I don't think Mariah and I are very caught up on like the Chinese dynasties in like the 1300s or like the 1200s like era, but it is very much inspired of like famines at the time because obviously like before Mao and like somewhat during some times too, obviously not China now, but in the past China did suffer a lot from famines and so many different problems and stuff. One because of emperors specifically, you know, and so like I think it is really important I think to do it in like that time because like there is no technology within this world at all. So it is like cuz her family is rice farmers and they don't even have anything like they don't have any technology that's like really like collecting the rice for it. It all seems to be done by hand and everything too. Even though they have magic in the society too, which is really interesting because the magic is pretty flexible. Like they can do a lot of stuff with it.
yeah, and like the way that I don't know how far
Because
like the magic system kind of functions like Encanto. Like you have like this coming, like you are born, you have to be of the lineage, and then
that's for
you come
some
to
specific.
an age.
Those are for specific ones because there are other like literomancers is what they're called. Like you don't have to be born to the emperor to
yeah, but then
so there's like other magic around too where it's like it's related to like literacy too, and this is also a time which was true in like Chinese history and like other parts of the world too when women were not allowed to learn to read or write. And so this is also taking place in that time where we have a young character that is born Wei, I guess is how you say her name. But
yes.
Wei being born into a poor family. It literally starts off where she's burying one of her siblings, where she's had multiple siblings die due to this famine, where her family, even though they work on a rice farm, the crops are just not yielding. And so they have multiple, like, they have death. And then she's very maternal over her younger brother, too. And she knows that she's not getting enough to eat. So she knows her younger siblings not getting enough to eat. Her parents are not getting enough to eat and stuff. Even though there's, like, obviously magic within the society because we see early on whenever it is the Chinese New Year. So they're going, well, it's not Chinese New Year, I guess, because it's not China, but it's like their New Year celebration, which is very similar to like how they would celebrate a Chinese New Year, where she takes her younger brother into town, and there one of the emperor's sons shows up and has powers where he's able to grow like a fruit trees and like fruit all around the people there to receive a blessing is what they call it specifically. And she's able to finally like try like a sweet fruit for the first time in her life. And he like this brother comes up and is like, hey, my older brother is looking for concubines.
So sign up, and they send off like whoever's like the most
beautiful,
like famous
and
beautiful
and has like the most connections in society, and like
that one gets sent off to like the choosing process. And we have our main character who just is like, I have to do this because of the opportunities. I can't not try. And she's just like, I don't care if you make a fool out of me.
Well, because also too, because the emperor in waiting, I guess you want to call it, the son that is next in line. One, he's not even the oldest son, which is already like causing complex within like the political sphere, like the court dramas of this. But also too, it does discuss how everyone is kind of worried in their world about whenever this emperor does die and the son takes over, because he is known around the country as being an incredibly violent guy. He is constantly killing servants and he's got I think his symbol is called the Tao, which you could totally correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't know the direct Chinese translation, or even if it is direct Chinese, which I think it is. But basically, it's something to do with wielding weapons and knives and steel. And so his power is more related to war and stuff specifically too. And within their society, whoever becomes emperor, that's kind of how their dynasty is going to be remembered, is whether or not.
Yeah. That's why they need so many concubines to produce as many heirs that also have these powers, because they're trying to strengthen their nation. Because to have these powers, you don't need literacy. It's important to have it so you can write spells. However, you can just kind of just make the magic happen.
Mm-hmm. Because he still
nobody in the general public can do that. Yeah, he does write spells, but he could just make things happen. They could just make fruit trees happen. They can move, literally move mountains.
He does not have to write blessings specifically for it. But also that is detrimental to health of these different characters too, which we will discuss more, which is also why the current emperor is so sick, because he was using his power basically to the extreme.
Yes, and you don't get it completely until later on, after the consort choosing, where you're actually able to see Taryn's violence.
Yes.
And him choosing Wei, because it's almost like you don't really know why he chooses her. He's kind of he's drunk. He doesn't want to be there.
He just killed another girl right before her as well,
because she was trying to assassinate him, because some people don't want him to come to power because they don't obviously he's
violent
and scary. So she's like, okay, that's my wife. And we learned very quickly that he is horrible. He is horrible.
Well, because I don't know what you got, but I think specifically because all of the other women that were selected to be in his I don't know what you want to cabinet sort of esque sort of thing, all of the other women that are even picked by these people, they all have affluent families in some type of way, whether or not they may not be the super wealthiest, but they're obviously basically the kinship of lords and stuff like that. But then whenever Wei shows up, he's like, oh, your family's a rice, you're a rice family. And then he's I think in a way it's inherently classist to specifically pick her, because he's oh, ha ha ha, one,
it's a middle finger to the people around him. Be
it's one to be I don't care what you people have to say about me. I do whatever I want, for one. And then also two, it's because I think inherently he knows that's one person he can have power over with no consequences for his actions.
It's almost also before we get to it, but a placeholder for his mother. And because of her upbringing being of a more lowly status, because his mom, we find out later on in the story, was actually a concubine. Not what did
she was them? A concubine, because
she was a concubine,
but know? She was I don't she was basically taken into a pleasure house as a child, and she had to work there as a child.
So there's kind of that class element where he faced things as a child and has some resonance, but then also his own twisted meanings of inflicting power. At least that's kind of what we know at that point in the story. But then there's so much we had that
first scene with the abuse specifically, because they have their first dinner, because she's chosen to be the Empress too, not even just which is basically the number one concubine, but also the leading woman of the dynasty, that's as good, because we can see right now too, because the main emperor is currently so sick, his empress is who's kind of running the show while he's so sick in bed he can't even move. And so obviously this is a very important status symbol to be the empress too, and to choose one poor woman, and then also to choose Wei specifically is such an interesting decision of Taryn, but we don't really know his full motivations. But then he calls her back because she's the first concubine, and he's oh, you basically, it's a really horrifying scene too, where he's oh, like, you heard about how horrible I was, yet you still signed up to be my concubine, so you're going to pay the price of that. And he forces her, like, basically force feeds her rice for like hours and hours until she's sick multiple times.
Which is just, it's so cruel and evil.
Yes.
And then on top of that, the other concubines do not respect her. They want her dead. So she ends up making a pact with Siyi that she's like, I need to learn
Who's a
how
eunuch,
to read.
that
yeah,
is.
All of the men that are working there are eunuchs, and I don't know if that's a real thing. I'm sure it is. It's gotta be. Like,
I don't know specifically, like, within Chinese, like, policy, if it was. I could believe it for sure, but I mean, that's such a, I feel like this is one of the first stories too, like, at least that we talked about on the podcast. Like, I feel like eunuchs are not brought up anymore in, like, stories, which I feel like is so interesting because it was almost like it was like a thing of the past, you know? And I feel like with a lot of more historical fantasy settings, like, I feel like it should be a more normalized thing. Like, the only thing I can really think of, like, popular culture of relevancy
Game of
of
Thrones.
other eunuchs. Yes. And I just say, like, isn't that really interesting?
Yeah, that's the only one I can think of too, off the top of my head.
Yeah. I don't know. I was actually surprised that, like, because there are so many different eunuch characters too, specifically. And, like, I feel like that is another, like, discussion, which we probably won't go in depth about, like, abuse and stuff like that because of what happens to those people and how they're treated as less than because they're eunuchs.
Yeah, but this, like, through, like, her literacy through Siyi, she is learning more, and she hears mention of this, like, heart stopper spell, and it's the only spell that can be used.
It's like the heart love poem. Where
yeah.
I think the Empress is like, because the Empress does not like Wei either specifically, and she, one, doesn't understand why she was chosen by Terran specifically, and so I think that is kind of like upsetting her, because one, she also does not like Terran either because she does have a son with the Emperor too, and obviously she would rather her son be Emperor rather than Terran, specifically. And then also, so she, I think she's a very powerful woman in the society, and she wants to maintain her power by having her lineage continue on with being Emperor rather than Terran. And so she kind of puts that idea in Wei's head, because specifically too, Terran has this, like, magical spell on him where he's basically invincible as well. It's like an arcane ward, and he cannot be killed through that spell.
Yeah, the only time that he will be able to be killed is when he has to take down all wards and he has to fight this dragon, which I thought the dragon Emperor was going to be a lot more of an integral part of this story, and it is important, but it was not nearly to the scale that I thought it was going to be.
I do think, like, within, like, Chinese culture too, I think dragons are typically more relevant too, so I think that's one thing that you kind of do expect more of, which I don't know, like, but then, so we have this, her Wei trying to, one, learn how to read and decide, like, what to do with her education, because obviously she is now placed in this abusive relationship, and specifically her having to be with this horrible man with having no choice. Like, but, like, it's almost framed as if she did have a choice because she wanted to be a concubine so bad, which the reason why was because she wanted to better the material conditions of her family. She wanted to make sure her younger brother could go to school and learn and have that education, because he's already so separated from society by not being able to do that.
Yeah, she thinks a really interesting little line where she says, how often was it I wondered then that the path we took was forced upon us? And she's kind of like talking about, like, the servants in this place, because it's like, why would you work here? But I thought that was an interesting part to add in, like, based on, like, your material conditions, the paths that you choose in life. And it's kind of like developing for, like, the overarching, like, politics of this story, where we're getting a lot of, like, backstory because she's having to learn. So she seeks out Yang Hessen, who is the, like, secondhand man to
He's
Terran.
the Emperor's eunuch, basically.
Yes.
That's like does all his
and is trying to
paperwork.
figure out. He's like, I want to learn more about Terran because she has to learn something that is like
she has
like
to learn
genuine.
his story to be able to love him, to write this poem to eventually kill him, basically.
And the more that she's learning about them, like what they've gone through, and all, like,
well, because we haven't even talked about
like
Morrow.
Cooking. I know.
Or
That's
Marrow?
like where there's it's I think it's Morrow. That's what it was in the audiobook.
Oh, okay. I didn't listen to it. So Morrow is also Terran's older brother, who is also vying for the throne. He wants to be emperor as well, but his power is not related to war. It's more related to trade aspects. And so she ends up, because Terran, that's one thing too, where in the palace they talk about Terran and Morrow had a very close relationship before any like throne making decisions happened, but then now these two people cannot stand each other. They cannot be around each other. They hate each other very extremely, and it's very interesting because essentially like people in, I don't know, because it's not like a castle. I don't know what you call it. Like, you know?
They called it like what, the Azalea Palace?
Yeah. So like within the palace, like people are so surprised that they were so close, but then drifted to opposite sides of the spectrum. And Morrow is kind of presented to the world as being like Prince Charming in a way. Like he's like the perfect guy. He doesn't even have any other concubines. He only has his one wife. He never like got any other women or anything like that. And he was originally supposed to be heir to the throne because he's the eldest, but then obviously he's kind of jaded because his younger brother is now emperor rather than him, and he feels as if he's more deserving, but then also he's a kinder soul.
Yeah, that's like what you get from Hessen's
basics,
account,
yeah.
right? You're getting like all of these different POVs, because then eventually things transpire, and we have Wei, who ends up becoming friends with Maru's wife, or the whichever, like, you know, like the main girl.
Yeah,
because she's not the Empress in waiting, but you know what I mean. It's like the first, anyways. Gets a hold of Maru's journals from when he was a child, aging from 9 to 16, because we know something happens at age 16. We don't know what it is, but after that point, they're like mortal enemies. Like, it's on sight.
Yeah. But then you get to learn about Terran's history with Morrow, and how Terran growing up was apparently like the sweetest child, the nicest kid to be around, but he was also very quiet and to himself, but then he was also very smart, but he didn't flaunt that intelligence to people at all. He kept very much to himself because everybody in the palace kind of thought that he was, I guess, dumb, and like they were like, oh, there's no reason for him to be emperor because he's stupid. But then he ends up being the first child of the emperor to write a spell, basically. And writing a spell, one, nobody's ever done it like as young as he has, but then he does that, and that kind of puts Morrow like booted to the back of the bus. Like, he's no longer the favorite son, and so then that is one of the main problems that they end up having.
Yeah, it almost has like the eldest child. I know there were always like talks about like the oldest sister, right? Like dynamic. Like if you're the oldest sister, like there's a lot of expectations that are expected of you. And I never really see this attributed to like
brothers
in the same way. But it's interesting like seeing it presented here, because obviously like there's like a throne, there's some power, because once you get in power and you win over the dragon, your power amplifies by like 1,000-fold or something. So there is something that you can potentially lose or become stronger and shape your nation. So Morrow's been socialized that like he needs to be in charge. He kind of knows all of this stuff about like how the dynasty is functioning and what paths need to be forced. He gets his power for his symbol, and like he can move mountains, literally. Like he's paving ways so that there can be trade, so there was economic prosperity. And very soon after that, his younger brother also develops a symbol, but his is more war oriented. So there's like this weird little like sibling dynamic that is forming, where it's like rivalry, but also like they're like both being pitted against each other.
Yeah, like it's not like their choice. It's obviously the politics of, because this is one of those books too, which I was telling Mariah too, like, because I started it before Mariah was like, this is like literally like 90% court politics.
Yeah. So that's a thing.
Which
I don't like court. It's a lot of drama. I do think this one was done really well and in a very interesting way.
Well,
whereas,
I think too, with having
Priory of the Orange Tree, I DNF'd.
Yeah.
I just did not. I could not. But this one, I like the different POVs. I liked Way's character, and I liked learning the backstory of all these characters, because you're slowly realizing like something really bad happened to Taryn, and he kind of is insinuating that he was harmed at a young age.
Yes.
Like, he's like, I'm trying to protect my brother. I'm going to protect you. And then he's doing things to kind of like undermine Maru's wishes, or Maru's wishes, where he's sick. So he goes and like fetches the doctor. And he's like, you can't use your powers anymore. And he's like, you like completely obliterated my... Yeah. He's like, you just want the throne. And Taryn's like, no, I'm trying to protect you. Like,
he doesn't want to lose his brother.
Safe. Which is very sweet. I think like their relationship dynamic,
especially
it almost felt like Wei was like the side character, like there was the side plot.
Well, because that's what was so interesting to me, which we didn't even talk, which I don't know how relevant really, because you also do get like the emperor, not the emperor before Taryn's time, like their father, you get their grandfather's perspective as well as like a good chunk, where basically you have this young boy who his family, he wasn't even like in line to be heir or something, but then like basically like some type of fight breaks out, and so then the emperor dies, and like the emperor's heir next in line dies, and he's like the only one left alive, so they're like, hey, you gotta be emperor, and he's like, I don't want to do that, fuck this, I don't want to do that, and they're like, oh well, you have to. And then Hessen, which was like also a young boy at the time, and then he's like, hey, you gotta do it, and then he's like, fine, I'll be emperor. And then the reason why he does it is because then you don't know what specifically magic choice he made, but then like it ends up being like his dynasty ends up being very prosperous and stuff, but then he ends up telling Hessen one time, he's like, oh, because he's like, how are we so prosperous right now? And he's like, oh, I stole from the future, is basically what he says.
And you don't know what that means.
Yeah.
You just know it means something.
Yeah. Which I thought was a really interesting, because I feel like that's one thing too that it never gets fully fleshed out. Like, you kind of just get that perspective of the story, and then you're just like, oh, okay, that's why they're suffering so bad. Because like their society, like famine is taking over. They're in like enormous amounts of debt with other countries around them. There's like constant war on their borders of them trying to be conquered by other nations. Like there is a lot going on that like, and you have to think their sitting emperor is basically useless. I mean, he's bedridden and hardly ever awake to do any type
and I think
of
that's
leading.
like, then we're having like Wei, because you're having these flashbacks to like the court politics, but you're having Wei who's inserting these like moments of like solidarity with
the
these servants and forming that, or how she has become the rice wife. She becomes a symbol of the empire, of like,
because there's
potential changes
there ends up
that could
being
be
like,
happening.
Basically, she's there for like a year and stuff, and she's basically like, they have to do like celebration, like a parade celebration, and all of the other concubines have gifts to give that are all like extravagant and great, but then of course she had nothing to give because her family has no wealth. So what she decides to do with her and her servants is they work together to basically, they all eat less, they start eating less, all of her and her servants, and they start like stockpiling their rice and stuff so that she could give it out to the people in the city. Which it's really interesting too with that scene, because she's with the Empress, and the Empress is like, oh, nobody in the city suffer, like, I know you're from way out there where the famine's actually hurting people, but people in the city don't have those problems. But then pretty much right after that, you have Wei go up right up, or like, I don't know if it's Wei or if it's her servant that goes like finds a boy that's starving sitting in the corner, or it's like, just because I think it does a great job about showing like how people in privileged places don't see those suffering around them because they're not suffering and they've never experienced true suffering.
No, and I think like Wei does a lot of reflecting back on like the opulence of the palace and how there's just fruit bearing trees. There's fruit rotting on the ground. Meanwhile, just in the surrounding areas of
She'll
the
be like,
palace, there is still people starving that isn't being redistributed. And I think she does a good job when she's talking to it gets towards the end and we kind of like learn more of Taryn's backstory, but she's telling him this story of like their village and how they were able to work together to
oh,
scare
to
off
send
this
off.
like demon wolf sort of thing. And you can like kind of like see it's like cooking where you don't really know what she has plans for like the politics and like the future of the dynasty, but she's planting these seeds
Very
slowly in the
like
people
a
around her.
cooperative idea.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting how it was done.
Yeah. Well, because like also too, again, while all of this is culminating, you still have multiple scenes of uh Wei being abused by Taryn and stuff every day. Like he summons one, he's supposed to be summoning other concubines, right? Because he's supposed to be planting his seed in all of these other women because obviously he needs to continue the lineage. That's like one thing that's pushed upon him and like very integral to the society is like you need to have as many children as possible, which he never sexually abuses Wei, but what he does every day is he can heal wounds specifically related to like the swords and stuff that he can control. So he's constantly having her stab herself, slice herself up, like very graphic. It's not super graphic because I do think a lot of it happens off page and it's sort of like referenced a lot where you basically know anytime she's summoned, she's getting cut up and then healed so that she has no abuse to show people like in public. But then also we have a scene too where one of the other concubine women, like because there's a lot of whenever the concubine women want uh Wei dead, they don't want her around obviously because they think they're better than her because she's poor and stuff like that. They try to poison her and stuff like that and C is like, hey, you need to kill them to show them a lesson. And she's like, I will not do that. Right? Like, she was like, I would never do that. And so then, whenever that happens, she ends up kind of forming a solidarity with some of these women. Like, obviously, there's still other girls that still look down upon her. But she's like, she ends up basically kind of having solidarity. And so, what happens is one of these girls comes up to her and it's like, hey, the doctor's about to inspect you to make sure that the child making activity is happening. But because that is not happening, what will happen if they are found to not be compliant with this law is that Taryn will no longer be emperor in waiting because obviously he's not doing his job of spreading his seed, and then also she will be killed
Not
because
just
he's
her,
no.
they're gonna kill all of the
No,
concubines.
only
Like
the They said that they'll only kill the concubine that he's been with, and the only
oh,
one he
okay.
was with was Wei
Okay,
specifically.
because they were like stressing that like our lives are on the line too.
No, they weren't. That's why the only the one girl told her was the one that she decided not to kill that originally poisoned her with the wine.
But
And
yeah,
so
it's crazy because then she has to use bamboo in a very creative way because Taryn will not touch her, and she just like doesn't
not
get it. It's like, am I
yeah,
that ugly? Like you can't make it
yeah.
happen. But he's just like cold sweat, drinking as much as he can. Like it's very like the way he acts is so interesting because you can tell like it's just all of the same types of like somebody who's
Alcoholism.
been abused, somebody trying to
Yes.
suppress something. They don't have a means of discussing it, and like they're taking it out on somebody else. And I think it's interesting the way it's done because then you learn that like his mom was like pimping him out
Just
in her
so he
original
could be the
city.
first to spread his seed so then that he was guaranteed to be next in line. Too.
Yeah, from the ages of like 9 to 16, which
Yeah.
is horrible. That
No,
is, you
absolutely.
know what? He
But
should have burned
again,
everything down.
what the thing is too is whenever that's one thing too, like whenever you are harmed yourself, it also does not give you the excuse to harm other people in the way that he does, specifically like Wei, right? Like I do think like because he ends up killing his mother, I think that's completely justified, you know, like maybe like that's a could be unpopular, because that's one thing too, where he was originally, as a child, he's shown to care for animals a lot, like even throughout the story before Wei fully knows like his abuse story, because there's like a snail like crawling. He's like, I need my paper to write this down, to draw a picture of this. Like, he is very like a big animal lover, and he is also like framed for like killing a whole pond of fish and stuff like that. But then whenever like Wei and Taryn do eventually get married, and they're on like kind of like their honeymoon, I guess like you would call it, and there's like ends up being a big blizzard, and there's like a pond outside. She ends up like, she doesn't even know why she does it too. She just saves these fish, which it's in the process of her, I think she's reading Maro's journals at that point too, where she knows that Taryn's been, he's been feeding the fish all the time. Like, that's all you kind of know, is that that's something that he does. And so then she like, even though the fish live outside and they survive blizzards, she's like, I think they should be inside. So then they bring all the fish inside. And then Taryn's like, why? And she's like, I don't know.
She's trying to like earn his trust, because
Yes.
she needs something earnest from him.
She does need
directly
to love him as well to be able to write this heart poem to kill him.
I think like going back, like she had a really good line where she said, it is true he has suffered, but if everyone who suffered became monsters, the world would be overrun with them. And I thought that was a really good encapsulation of like where this is going. It's like, yeah, like he does these really horrible things, and it's not forgiving of him in any sort of way
for violence and stuff. Like, it does make you understand it and recontextualize why somebody would do that. But then again, that's like why like we fight for like a society that focuses on rehabilitation and actually helping these people that have these problems, like these traumas and stuff, to actually work through them, rather than continuing that cycle of violence. Because it is a cycle, because you know, with what happened with Taryn's mother, she was abused. She was literally like, her family, like she got separated from her family as a child. She was only called Autumn because that was the season they found her in, and she was taken from her family during like a war. She was obviously sexually abused as a child, and she became a concubine, continued to be sexually abused. And so then what does she know? She knows to continue that cycle, and that's what she does to Taryn. And Taryn then continues not that specific abuse, but he does continue other abuses because of the traumas that he's faced. Because also he has Maro, that he thought that's supposed to be the one person that he trusts, ends up trying to kill him.
Yeah, and I think this, like, you get all of this information, you know everybody's backstory, and then it gets up to the point the Emperor dies. He just up and dies after the like the heart because or ender spell is like ready, and then he just magically dies after she tells the brother Maru and his wife.
She's like, hey, I'm ready to kill him. And then they're like, oh, okay, that's awesome. And then the Emperor dies, and so then basically it's shown that like, because Maru's the one that he does visit his father a lot, so then they think that he was obviously doing some type of spells to keep him alive. And then once he is sure that he's secure in the throne, he's able to just kill his father without having any remorse.
And you learn with like a conversation with the Empress, she's like, I didn't spread that rumor about you, because we all think that it's like the Empress that spread the rumor about them not consummating their wedding, and it ended up being the sister-in-law.
Yes.
Which it's just like full circle, but you don't know who, like, what's gonna happen, because he's like fighting the dragon and by himself.
Yes, because he doesn't have anyone he can trust whenever he takes down his arcane warp, because I think he knows that he's been abusive and violent to so many other people. I mean, there's powerful people that obviously have lost children, they've lost like servants and stuff. Like, I mean, we didn't even talk about too how he killed all of Wei's servants whenever she like comes to him and is basically like, hey, your advisor Hessen, he's plotting against you, sort of vibe, you know, which is not true. She is lying to him, because Hessen is discovered that she's literate and that she's working on this heart poem to kill Taryn. And so to get in front of that so that Taryn does not kill her, he kills all of her servants, because he is so frustrated because he's killed basically his only father figure in life, you know, and he doesn't know how. He thought like the servants and stuff were like compromised in the same way he was, but then also he's got severe anger issues where he can't control his anger, so then he just slaughters like 20 people.
Yeah, and he also acts like he's like,
It was a
here you
good thing
go.
he did. Yeah,
I'm serving this
what
up
do
to
you
you on a
think?
platter. What do you think?
And
And
she's
she's
like,
like trying to like lock in. She's just like,
she can't even pretend to be nice. Like, that's the thing too, because she's just like
even with
so in
his
shock.
kindness, but like he's only been taught that like
Violence is
through violence is how you like show people that you love them, which is just really
because
fucked up. Like he got it really bad.
all of the people that are supposed to love him, his mother, his brother, have all shown him through. Because that's one thing too. Like whenever he's growing up with Morrow, he's trying to be friendly with his brother and do things with his brother, but then his brother just shows him hate and violence and rudeness to him as growing up too. Because like there's even the time whenever like Taryn, like he beats up Taryn for virtually no reason. But then whenever you're in an abusive relationship and you grow up like with abusive parents and abusive family members, that's how you see love portrayed, because those are supposed to be the people that protect you and care about you the most. So then what do you do whenever you have someone you care about? You lash out in the same way. Not that it's an excuse again for any of this violence. Taryn is still not a good person.
Which I think is so interesting, the way that their powers manifest, because like the older brother who's been socialized that like we need prosperity and everything, like he gets this power that will help pave roads for trade. But then the younger brother who's been harmed, and he knows that like violence is like his only means of either expressing his feelings or like maintaining any sort of power, because a lot of this is centralized around power. He gets that power, you know.
Yeah.
Like I just thought it was interesting like how they both managed to get powers that kind of reflected their personalities and their upbringing.
Do you think it's because like in this story too, like I don't know how connected it is to like Chinese culture too, but they do reference like the ancestors and like rebirth and stuff like that too. So I wonder if that is a lot of leaning to like destiny and like the way the ancestors know, like they already know the past, present, and future and what's going to happen and everything like that. So then I imagine like in their mythos, the ancestors bestow these powers onto the Emperor's children and whatnot, and so they would have already known that like Taryn is going to be abused, and so then him having like the signal of violence will end up fitting his life story, because that's what he's obviously grown up to and what he will grow up to. Whether or not it's like pre-planned destiny or not, I don't think the story does explore that, but I do think it's like sprinkled in there in a way.
I thought it was really nice though with the ending, how like both of the brothers like perish, right? Very
Thank
shortly
God.
within each other. And like you kind of don't know what's going to happen, because she ends up casting this heart spell to save him from his brother.
Yes. Because Morrow goes in, but because Taryn wins, right? He defeats the dragon. He's like, oh, he's gonna be emperor. But then, because whenever like her ways, servants and stuff are slaughtered, she's like, I do not know what to do. She is very torn because with the way Morrow, like she knows Morrow is corrupt in some way because he's able to instantly like kill his father once he knows that he's going to be in power. Once he know like and she knows that her sister-in-law basically is also like, they're all like power hungry corrupt beings, and she's trying to decide what is better to be in power, Morrow or Taryn, because those are virtually the only two options. And she's like, both of these options suck. Like she's like,
that she was
no two-party system.
Like...
Yeah, so
she's like, I'm going with the third party.
Yeah. So then whenever like Taryn wins and stuff, so which Morrow is like, one, he expects her to be writing like this heart poem to kill him while he's fighting the dragon, but then she lets him succeed, and Morrow is like, basically he feels betrayed, so he's like, well, this is the only time I can kill Taryn to make sure I secure my spot. So then he goes in and fights Taryn, and then her, rather than letting Taryn die, she does that spell and revives him so he can kill Morrow, which is such an interesting choice at that point.
It was. And I think especially like when you learn that he was working on this heart spell for his brother. to
Yes,
keep
because
him safe. Like, it was very, I get like
that's
why
what
people cry over this is because
Yes.
like the brothers' relationship was just done so well.
Well, because like that's the thing, the arcane ward. The only reason why it ended up on Terran was because Morrow tried to murder him specifically and killed all his fish, basically. So then he's like, "Well, you don't
And then his
deserve my
mother
love."
just whispering in his ear, like, "You need to do this right now."
Yeah. So then he's like, "Okay, well, I guess because the spell's already done, I guess it goes to me rather than you." Which it's just so crazy the way that like all of this could have been resolved with like some therapy, you know. But then and then also we have Wei, who ends up going in to the area that's unwarded, and like Terran's like, "Oh my god, you saved me. I felt your heart in my heart, blah blah blah." And then she's like, "Good night," and stabs him and kills him.
Which I didn't expect it to. I thought she was gonna like try to change him, and I was like, "Oh my god, it's
That's
not
what
gonna
I
be what."
kind of
And
thought
then
too.
she doesn't, and she ends up. That was crazy. Then she goes to jail. She's in jail. Obviously, we kind of expected that. I didn't think she was gonna live through that.
No,
what
this
do you
ending
think
part,
of it?
I think this was probably the poorest part of the story for me. I think it was the weakest part of the story.
I think it went on a little bit too long. I wish it would have had a little bit more of ambiguity, especially like I liked the conversation that she had with the
next brother.
Well, not like the youngest brother, but like the next
in line.
He's the one that can make fruit and food, which I think is so interesting because like there's famines. Like he has this power that is going to,
which he's
cause,
only
like
he's
young, right?
limited. I think he's supposed to be like a teenager. I imagine he's supposed to be around Wei's age, probably, because I imagine Terran and Morrow is much older, like more 20s age, and then she was 16 at the beginning of the book, so she's probably 17 or 18 by the time the deaths happen. And I imagine him as being around the same age or maybe a couple of years younger than her. But again, that could just be because she ended up having to socialize. She was socialized different and had to become more adult at a much younger age, which women often are, you know. And we could definitely talk about that for an hour or two. But I thought it, because like obviously I liked that the I don't remember. Too bad. Sorry to this man. I don't know your name. But whenever
Isan?
Maybe.
Is it Guan Isan? Is the prince?
I don't know. Maybe. I don't remember. And also, that's one thing too. We finished reading this a couple days ago too, so we have not. This is one of those ones where we didn't film it immediately after.
I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I believe you. But he's like, because she's like, why were you getting concubines for your brother? Like, what? You knew he was evil. Why would you do that? He's like, the only reason why I did it was because I was going to the poorer parts of the country to make it have some type of prosperity. Because that's the only way. Which is like as good as you can be. But I do.
But then also he's like wigging out because he's like, you just killed a dynasty.
Yeah.
You just killed it. And I thought Wei had a really good line. And she goes on and on. Like, it's a very long quote, but it kind of concludes with her saying what it's like to be alive and living. She says it was suffering, it was enduring, it was living. Isan, I thought you have no idea how hard it is living. It is not something you can learn from inside the palace walls. And if it meant that we had no swords to defend our borders, so be it. If it meant the CVD would come raid the West, which is like the enemy,
the other countries,
then so be it. If it meant that Leon charging in from the north and retaking Tiza and all the other territories, then so be it. Maybe they would be better rulers. Maybe they would not allow us to starve. And if it meant provinces rebelling and the dynasty crumbling like dust, if it meant emperors and thrones sinking into the ashes of history, if it meant Tenshan with all its culture and commerce and glory becoming only a distant memory, then let them. There was nothing so awful about oblivion. It could be the greatest nation in the world, the most magnificent empire that ever existed, but it could not keep its own children safe and fed. Was it something really worth fighting to save?
Bars.
And I thought that was like, she was really spitting.
Yes. And that's what I wish, like, it kind of just ended like with that, you know?
But then you get a little bit more that she ends up becoming Empress, and she's like, one of her rules is she wants women to learn how to read.
she basically ends up having terms for him too, and she's like, hey, like, let me go, feed the people, blah blah blah. And then because also too, Taryn did write a bunch of like blessings of like
Like
sword blessings.
20,000.
So they do still have like a war, like an army in a way to use. Um but she's like basically like, I want to go home to my family. And then Hessen comes up and is like, hey, actually, you should marry him because like he's like, you're a goat empress. We need you. And then she's like, okay, I guess. Which I feel like, I don't know, like I get it, but I'm also because like then it feels almost like, I don't know, like reformery. Like she has the power to reform rather than like letting it
Fix it from the
crumble.
inside.
Yeah.
And I think that's like where like I'm kind of willing to let it slide because of like at the point in history, like everything that was going on, but at the same time,
It's a fantasy though.
it's tough.
You
It's
can
like
do whatever you want.
you could do whatever you want. It would be cool. Like, but also like I get like they'd have to like it was like a really severe famine, so it's not like the Agrian class would be able to hold their own against like these forces that are trying to invade and kill them and steal their land. So
Yeah.
there's also like that to take into consideration. So I'm like, okay,
Well, I just feel like
I'm willing to like let it slide, but I think it would have been better if it left at
more
that point.
ambiguous, where it was just like
she rode off into the sunset.
Like if she rode off into the sunset, or even like I feel like it could have just been like Hessen being like, if you want to, like I'm not going to force you, and then it ends there. So then it's up to you yourself to decide whether or not she decided to ride off into the sunset, or if she did decide to go and become Empress. You know, where it kind of has both of the, like I think that would have been a much stronger ending, where leaving it more open ended like that. You know, just because then it doesn't set in stone.
That kind of killed my rating for this book. It like that's why I was like, one, I wasn't crying,
and yeah, I did not cry either.
I wasn't a super big fan of like that little epilogue ending.
I agree with that, but then I think one thing too, like as well as some scenes were written, I do think there is kind of a lot of yada yada about some stuff too. Like Wei as a character, I think almost this book would have been stronger if it was wrote in like third person limited rather than first person, because the way Wei's character is written is she's very distant from herself, which could be a discussion too on how like whenever you are being abused in a way, then how that like distances yourself to survive, whether or not you can like see yourself through like your first person perspective. But it doesn't really discuss that, so I think it probably would have been better being third person limited or even third person omniscient, because we do end up having those multiple point of views that are so relevant. And like even like reading, like sometimes I do think it was a little confusing whenever you're like reading Maru's journals, like
or getting or Maru.
Yes, like whenever you're getting those perspectives from them, it's like written oddly. I don't know if you got that vibe too. Like it's just
you didn't know it shifted.
Yeah, it's like it's so because because Wei is using like I, me pronouns, but then you go into these sections where it's like no longer the I, me pronouns. It's very jarring, I think, which I think a more either seasoned writer either could have done it better or maybe would have just done it all in third person.
Well, and I also felt like you couldn't really see her growth. Like it felt like it took place after she read these things. But I know based on like who she was and what she was doing, it was definitely happening off page, and I would have liked to see her growth, because I did see some reviews that were like, why do I need to see like a woman trying to like fix a man in this like current political climate? And I can kind of see that, but I do think this like succeeds where I think Suzanne Collins and like the Bout of Songbirds and Snakes like failed, because like you do get like those, I felt like it made sense why he was the way he was, whereas if you have like
I agree.
Snow, this isn't even spoilers, book's been out for fucking ever, but you know, like it's Snow, he's evil, he's a fascist, but I don't feel like you really like get it. He's just, you don't like, see like his origin man.
Yeah,
but this made a lot more sense, and I felt like it had that notes on an execution vibe.
Yes, I agree, because I do think it does a much better job about discussing like the cycle of violence in ways that, especially even other like fantasy books and stuff, like even with like the darkness of stories, whenever you have like a bad character, because like even though like Taryn, you do not like him as a character, but you should still be able to empathize with him as a character and what happened to him. Like, I still feel bad for him too, and I think that's one thing too. Whenever he dies, and like his ghost is like the young Taryn, and she sees like the young Taryn whenever she's writing the lines. And I do think one thing that does kind of suck too. I wish her like love heart poem was like in the story, because this
Yeah.
whole book centers around that, and I think not having that at all, like not even a couple lines from whatever she wrote down, I think, which I don't know if maybe she felt like her poetry herself, like as an author, wasn't strong enough, but I do think with the whole book centering around like her having to write this strong poem, I think that should have been there, you know?
Yeah, it was weird because the inspiration by the author for this is that she wanted to pay a lot of homage to classical Chinese poetry that she grew up memorizing, and she didn't appreciate it until like later in life. This was in that Reddit post. I don't feel like there was that much poetry in this.
There was
and
like
I
a
wish
little
there was
bit.
more.
I think there was a little
for like
bit.
the title and the theme
Yeah.
with the spells. I would have liked to see
agree.
like what exactly that poetry was and the impact. But I feel like maybe the author was scared. So there is certainly limitations to this. I think this would be a really good book for like the girlies that really like literary fiction that want to get into fantasy. I think this would be cool because I think the way that it works, it just works well for like that kind, especially because it's so character focused.
Mm-hmm. Which, you know? Honestly, and you typically, I'm not a big fan of character focus, which I think what makes up in this with like being character focused is the court politics, because I do love some court drama. Like, I eat that up. And because I wasn't expecting going in this to one even be like a discussion of violence in any way, shape, or form. I thought it was going to be like how Daggermouth is like the new like dystopian romance sort of vibe, where I thought they're gonna I genuinely thought like going into this it's gonna be like dark romance but fantasy, basically, you know?
Same. And I think it was really refreshing.
Yes.
For fantasy, because I've read so much and I feel like sometimes fantasy kind of follows the same kind of like formula. There's like elements. Yeah, there's like a formula to it where you like have like this underdog character, and then they get invited and they have like this quest that they're going to go do something, and then it's like there's trials and tribulations, big fight, ending. Mm-hmm. But this had a lot more to it that made it more interesting, so it felt different.
And I do appreciate too, I think one thing too, like whenever you read like, not like, again, whenever I like use book talk like derogatory, it comes from a place of love, you know? Because like obviously I read book talk books, but like with like book talk fantasies, you always do have like that poor like a poor like girl, typically like a poor woman getting placed into like this high ranking society and stuff, and then she leaves all of that class solidarity behind and acts as if she's never like been poor or suffered in her life. And I really do appreciate that Wei still does have, like, all throughout the novel, she connects with the working class throughout this whole novel, no matter what position she gets put into. And I think that's such an important theme that I wish more fantasy novels actually had that connection.
Yeah, and I do think like it worked, because like I know we like kind of, it's teetering that edge where it could be viewed as like reformism, but like given the like power structures, like I don't know that how you could like combat against like the emperors having so like 1,000-fold power. Like I don't know what the new prince can do.
Well, because like that's one thing too, which I mean, again, that's where I think like maybe a more seasoned author probably could have like a better plan for how like the court politics end up working out, like within a full scale revolution sort of idea. Because like obviously I think that's how any great fantasy went in, with like a corrupt like power structure, you know? I want all of the rice farmers and like the poor people to be able to own the fruits of their labor and to be able to not suffer, you know? Which, as much as like Wei can do, which again, I think like the ending is just like the weakest part for me. That, and like also like the lack of poetry, because I do think that could have made it a step further. Because I don't know if we even talked about our ratings, because I give it like a 4.5. It's like 4.5, 4.25. I don't really know, like,
yeah, it's like a 4.37.
Like, yeah, no, literally.
And like That's literally where it's at. I was looking on
that's how
Goodreads
I feel as well.
to see like
Which
what
I guess
other books are recommended.
You know what? 4.40, y'all are right. It is 4.40.
It is. That is completely accurate. I do agree with the rating of this book.
Yes.
What's so interesting is that Kingdom Will Not Kill Me by Ilona Andrews that we went and saw is like the first recommended book. That's a 4.43 star with 41,000 ratings. What the fuck?
I know. I don't know. I'm scared of that book because, like, low-key, it seems shoogy to me. Like, the authors were nice enough, you know?
That's a crazy rating.
I know, but that's the thing. Like, I had no idea, which apparently I had the book on my want to read, which I had no memory of whenever, like, we saw them. Like, yes. And then after, like, we saw them at, like, the Columbus Book Fest, I feel like I've been seeing, like, people talk about their books all the time now. And I'm like, where did you people come from?
I don't know. If anyone's read any of Ilona Andrews' books, if this makes it into the final cut, let us know. This is all to say that we are wrapping up. These are kind of like the thoughts that we've been bottling up for the last little while. Mm-hmm. What's next? What's next on the podcast?
We do have our book club read.
That's next, right?
Yeah, our book club.
Okay. Which is another fantasy. It's by Caitlin Starling.
This is not really fantasy, though. Where's the magic, really? I mean, at least where I am, there's not, like, magic. It's, like, medieval. We're reading The Starving Saints by Caitlin Starling. And by the time this is uploaded, you still got a couple of days to read along with us. If you want to see some early thoughts and opinions, it's on Fable. We are discussing it there.
Let me see if we just ran a poll to see what the September book club read is going to be, and I think it's over.
I don't know if it is. It's probably only got a couple more hours.
14 hours left, so you won't know. But fuck it. We'll just announce it because I don't think anyone else is going to vote on it. I'm pretty sure the next book club read is going to be Victorian Psycho by Virginia Fido. But if that is not the case, I will put it. It will be on the screen right now for you at the time of editing it.
I kind of guarantee it's kind of winning by a good little bit.
Yeah, it would take a substantial amount, and this isn't going to get posted until after it's up. And then we'll have our August reading wrap up. That will be the next time we talk about just all of the random stuff we're reading and our progress in Herkyed, which is the hardest reading challenge you'll ever do 3.0. We are doing that. It is, in fact, the hardest reading challenge I've done. I also haven't done a ton of reading challenges, so I don't have a lot of frame of reference.
That's the goal of it. I mean, I wonder, maybe we could do like a mini talking about Herkyed as like a whole too. Maybe at the end of the
quarterly.
Year.
Like, do you quarterly want to do that? For Herkyed.
Well, I don't know, or we could, I think
so
whenever
like
it's over. I think whenever it's over, I think September is technically quarterly. Because it'd be July, August, September. That's 3 months.
Oh, yeah, because you include July, huh?
Well, like it would be July to August 7th is a month. And then August 7th is...
That's why I think it's October.
I don't know, but 7th. I think in but I mean, it's most of July. I don't know.
Maybe end of September-ish we can film where our update
if we
is.
I don't know if we're going to have any openings.
Because I know we are busy because of your stuff with like Louder Than Life and stuff. That might be a good one to slam in there. Maybe.
Well, I guess other than that, don't forget to like the video. I know we already said it earlier, but it really does help. And then also subscribe if you're not, or follow us on whatever you are listening to us on. But other than that, thank you and good night.